And I wonder how long I was not on the page. So I wonder, oh, we just started off. Okay. So none of what I just said actually made it onto the internet. Okay. So that being the case, I'm 12 minutes into a lecture on how to make an amulet, right? Let's start over. What are you making, right? What is the order of operations? Well, let's start at the beginning. You have an ink. You have an ink that is a foundation, right? In a color that you need. Let's say it's a Talisman of Abundance, okay? Your colors should be green and blue, all right? Now, this is where it's going to get fun. Why would you use blue? Because Jupiter rules wealth, not just money, right? Wealth is the accumulation of everything, so you have a stabilized environment, okay? So your principles of Jupiter are going to form the boundaries of your circle, all right? What are the states of prosperity within each of the planetary aspects, right? You could draw the letters of prosperity. You put the numerological aspect of it using the Pythagorean 1 through 9, and then write your A through I, S through R. What's up, Mike? How's it going, buddy? So in making this Talisman of Abundance, right, you are using the sigils and the magic squares, right? You would use the square of Jupiter to do the primary planetary principles of like prosperity, right? Each to their corners, each to their locations, right? And then you would go through and then you would add more detail. What would be the extra details that you would add? Well, then you would go to a book like Nigel Pennick's The Magical Alphabet, right? You would look at Omicron being the O, right? That would be the symbols of the sun, the principles of Christ, and the benefit of that, right? Then you would look at theta, which is the principles of development, right? And then you would look at lambda, which is the principles of prosperity, right? Whereas if you were to look at, oh, sorry, I have that one wrong. Omicron, that is, where did it go? Where did it go? There's theta, there is, I screwed that up, see? I had already said this once, and that's what, and then shit wasn't online. So it's like, okay, well, now I have to go back and do it all over again. All right. So Omicron is the enclosed power of the sun, the fountain of all energy on Earth. It is the circular form reflects the apparent disk of the sun and the eternal nature of its light within the darkness of space. Right. And then theta is the eighth character. So it's the circle with a little line going horizontal through it. And that is the fixed stars that the crystal sphere upon which all former cosmology of the fixed stars were believed to stand. It represents the eightfold division of time and space. So using the 8 around the boundary with the 9 in the center. So this is why I say use the 8 planets and prosperity if you're going to make and distinguish out which one goes in which point, right? Now, you're going to have circles within circles, right? So you've got the entire circle, which also represents Omicron, right? That's going to be your boundary circle. You draw that in your blue, right? And then you've got the 8-fold division. So you've got 8 little blue circles going all the way around, right? And then you've got the fixed stars of what they represent as prosperity elements, right? So you do the numerological aspect of prosperity on the 1 through 9 to determine which ones go where, right? 1 in 1 position, position 2, position 3, position 4, position 5, etc. Using the square of the earth in the center because you want to bring that energy back to the earth, right? And so think about things like overconnecting the same character. So the Greek lambda, the Lagu from the runic characters and Lamed, right? As together because that represents the plant growth and the mathematical progressions associated with the figure in geometry upon whose principles organic growth proceeds. It's linked mystically with the geometric ratio known as the golden section and is the 11th letter of the Greek alphabet. Lambda represents the ascent to a higher level. Mathematically, this is demonstrated by 2 progressions of lambda, the Greek and the arithmetic. Or the geometric and the arithmetic, sorry. The fundamental sequences of ancient Greek mathematics, right? Is you have the form that it takes and the language used to describe that form. So is the geometry, is the form, this is the mathematics of form, and the arithmetic is the language of flow within that form, okay? And so if you overlay a symbol that looks like lambda with the Greek letter or the Hebrew letter, Lamed, right? You could create a bind rune with that. It doesn't have to be a specific Norse runes only, right? It's a compound glyph is what those become, right? And so if you overlay like the X, that represents the primal gift in the runic script, but it also represents the relationship that is established between the giver and the receiver. So if you're trying to do these things, then you would use green for plant life, you would use the green for money, you would use, so these are the characters you would draw in green in between those planetary anchors, which are the fixed arrangements around your circle. So you have fixed circle in position one over the bottom, right? Like you've got the two squares, the square and the diamond, right? And then in the spaces in between, you could do the Greek Lamed, Theta, and L rune, and you could do in another one, you could do the G along with another symbol that you feel represents what you're looking for. So you can get really myopic, and because I'm not actually drawing this out, like I'm not making a prosperity talisman, this is an example of how to do that. But your geometry matters, right? And then once you get that drawn, then you have to awaken the element. You have to awaken the thing. You have to consecrate your talisman. So that's where you light your candle. And that's where you get, if you've got one of these, or if you're using the seals of the power and things like that, that's when, in this case, you find the color sympathies that are most predominant in your spell. And so if you're using a spell of Jupiter and Venus to create money and wealth, right, prosperity, then you would use the two colors that represent that best. In this case, it is the green and the blue, right? This is the seal of water, right? And so between the two of these, is the energy coming down from heaven above, or is it coming up from the earth below? Depending on that is the overlay, right? And so in the difference, you could paint it to look very similar to this, and then you just put your symbols and stuff around these arrangements, so that way you know where the energy is coming from. And so when you go to awaken your talisman, you can put it on this seal, and then from that energy, that becomes your link. That becomes your attachment point. Make sense? Mike, does that make sense? Like, hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, we shall see what happens with that. Now, that is an example of consecration of the whole thing from front to end, in as quickly as I could deliver it, which, awesome. And that was only 8 minutes instead of the original 12, even though I fumbled around a bit. I apologize, y'all, for y'all missed a good tirade because I wasn't in the right window on the computer. So I apologize about that. Now, we're talking about ascent, right? Oh, was fighting with the cat. Oh, angry pussy. Never fight with a... Never mind. There's a joke in there somewhere. Never fight with one. It's not worth it. You know, they'll kill you in your sleep, man. And those little bastards get vicious. So, what you know, they're always plotting to look to destroy life, right? Like their cats are like, I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you. All right. So we're talking about the path of ascension, or the path towards ascension, right? And what is that? It is the understanding that you are in a physical body, but within you represents an energy. That energy is the energy that fires your neurons in your brain to behave the way you do, to think the things you do, to express the world in the way you think it expresses itself, right? You are no more that electrical charge than you are your physical body. It is the union of the physical charge and your environment and the conditions that make you who you are, okay? Understanding that gives you the understanding that you need to basically make your body your own. You're in your body. You're in your electricity. You have to own your power, right? It literally means owning the electricity that moves through your body to animate you, to give you the nervous reactions, like to give you the response to these things so you can tangibly interact in accordance with your will, right? Being flesh bodies is a literal act of manipulation of the environment in accordance with our will, right? For like the lunch that I'm going to have, I got the seasoning salt out, right? To open the cap is a thing that modifies the environment in accordance with my will. Technically, that's magic. Technically. It's not ritual magic. It's not doing it in a way that is all like, oh, the spirits are opening up the cap for me. Yeah, a spirit is mine in flesh with a physical body and an action, right? Intangible action to cause the manipulation of the environment. You have to understand that the same principles are at play when you take this, unscrew the cap, and add it to your ingredient, right? That's magic, technically. Okay? Now, how does this apply for the intangibles that I'm talking about? Right? Well, it does and it doesn't, right? The things that I'm talking about, the chemical response between us and the thing over there in person A and B's life that they've hired me to manipulate, right? They want situation C to occur with person A and B, right? But the problem is person A has these conditions going on, person B has these conditions going on, and the whole thing is fucked up because person A is a dick, person B is a dick, and they're being dicks to their environment, and situation C is very rarely going to outcome the way you want it to, right? Ascending through the energy patterns, the layers of energy, right? The great ladder of heaven, right? Jacob's ladder to heaven, right? You have to understand that you have to be able to trigger the different behaviors in those energies as they manifest differently. And so this goes back to that prosperity talisman I was talking about a little while ago. Why do you have to go through and include principal origins for the 8 planets? The one that you're on and the 7 above. Because that's the energy through rate. To get any point in a 3-dimensional space, you need to know 8 points. You need to know the 6 that surround the environment. The single point of origin is 7, and the point of original origin that you're moving into, 8. And then there's the container for it. So technically 9, right? What does it look like when it's all done? So 8 is the surround, 9 is the center, right? And if you put a ring around that, congratulations, you're working with the mathematical principles of 10, right? The ring, the 8, the center. 10. Earth. Magic that manifests on Earth. Right? And then you can subdivide it out and you can put the 4 quarters on there. Absolutely. But if you're going to do that, then make sure that you're using the elemental principles of those 4 quarters as the energy moves from that planet to this planet in that position. So are you trying to bring energy to Earth from that planet, from that element, from that behavior, right? And if so, are you going to need to make a compound glyph, or are you going to need to make a relationship arrangement with that, right? Like, do you need to go through and do different things? Because that's the thing that I've got, again, in one of my other books that I'm going to include in this Path of Ascension stuff, or in the because this book doesn't really go into detail on how to make talismans and stuff. That's going to be a section for the volume 2 for the 10-year anniversary stuff, right? That'll be the Grimoire of Arts volume 2. Right. And I'll spend the next 10 years teaching on that. And then I'll do a 10th anniversary of that. And so by the time I'm 40 years into practice, there will be a 10th anniversary of the volume 2 to complement the 10th anniversary of the volume 1 and the 20-year anniversary of the volume 2, which is technically the 30-year anniversary of the entire practice. Right. So it's like I can stage these things. That way, the information I deliver is the very best possible of this material that I'm talking about. Right. Like I said, this is my life. This is what I do. This is what I've been doing for the last 23 years. Right. And I've only been publishing since 2009. Mostly so. Right. Your bookshelf is going to look good, man. But the thing is, I want to get you writing these spells, that kind of patterning. What are the things that took you 10 years to learn? Put it down on paper and then spend the next 10 years teaching it, refining it. And then write another book in relation to the thing you published the first time and your 10 years of teaching, right? Like that's what the 10th anniversary book is for, right? And that's getting the environment and the conditions so that we can do all of this together is just an absolute delight, right? And the next step, what's the secondary, right? And so all that stuff that I mentioned on the planetary talismans and things like that, that's to get those arrangements done in a way that actually makes sense and is viable, right? Because there's a lot of books like the few talismans that I was talking about the other day. When you're drawing your amulets, you're drawing your talismans. Amulets are the general shapes that generally you leave around, like that have a general purpose. There are established purposes, like the ujat or the Eye of God, which is the blue glass with the white, and then the dot with the pyrite inside. Dude, you're the divine sorcerer, so you fucking better do it. Good. Good. Very good, Mike. Very good. I appreciate that. Yes. He says, people will think I am King Solomon. I do that. LMAFO. Yeah, precisely. Precisely. And so you're going through these things, right? We've talked. You are. Yeah, exactly, dude. Come on. Build a temple, buddy. Get the demons working for you, right? Like, and can you help them get me to build a school? Like, I need a school done. Like, let's get them like to start like putting shit together for me, right? So the ascension of the body, energy points within the human body that allows for the source currents to flow through each of the gates of chakra points, right? The gates of the chakras are wheels within wheels, right? They are not specific points within your body, and there are entire charts dedicated to this in Taoist magic. This is, like I said, this is just a cursory. This is what gets the conversation started, right? When the body and the spirit moves as one, regardless of the dependency on the need for flesh, one's chi current has that one has flowing through them will allow them to tap into the roots of all formative powers present on this plane in their operations, right? And that is exactly what I was talking about creating that through line of energy. You are that energy flow that animates the neurons in your body to create the response and the actions of your physical body and these things, right? Using that, doing that, applying that. It's a requirement, right? Like this stuff is not separate from chemistry, right? The stuff that I'm talking about is getting your spirit to move in accordance with your will through your body at all times. So that way, when you like with magic, right, and you send out a shockwave ripple of what's going to happen, that shockwave, that ripple, that manifestation, whatever it is, corresponds to a thought you had. It originated with you. You are then responsible for every thought in your fucking head, right? And so if you can think, or if you have too many thoughts that are overwhelming you, you got to work your way back to calm. You've got to work your way back to a singular calm, right? And so that's what meditation is for, right? If you can enter the no mind state, nothing in my head right now exists. Like I don't have like the little voice in the back of my head that I'm like continually having a conversation with, like to make sure that this is what I'm doing or this is how I go through my day, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's empty. It's quiet. Right? It's chemistry and it's biochemistry. It's astrology and mythology. It's fucking magic. It is. It is. And we are the unification of all of these things. We are the physical principles of all of these things made manifest. There are so many times I go through in my day-to-day life and I look at the stories that I've read or I've watched on TV, right? And I'm like, oh, those are actual people that I know. The behavior in that story, they behave the same way as the people that I know, right? So that's the thing that you have to watch out for is that the mythologies talk about the types of people. Stories are the behaviors, right? And so they're even down to the same fucking name, right? They're down to the same fucking name. And it really is synchronism. Absolutely, bro. Absolutely. You know, and that's the thing is like you're going through these things, but you've got to watch out that the synchronism that you're observing and the stuff that you want to have happen, you got to make sure that those are on point. Because like I said, you're responsible for it. So if stuff is happening around you that you don't want to have happen around you, you got to work that shit back and get control. Well, how do you get control? You have to observe, you have to meditate, you have to think, you have to separate yourself from the experience. So that way there is a point of separation. So that way when those gears click in, then the magic occurs. And then when you separate out, you can create a safe pattern, right? So that you can interact with the world and you're not on. right? You can be in an on state or an off state, depending on your will. The rite of transformation puts your body in a constant on state. It gives you full control over what you do, right? And it turns it on, right? Now, you can take a paintbrush, right? And what you paint with it becomes a path of power, right? Because by putting your brush into that ink we talked about making earlier, right? That is the on switch of connection between the intangible thought of what that image should look like and the physical material of drawing it out. So you are creating a vibration pattern within creation by drawing it out in the sacred inks. By putting it together, you're creating vibration. You're creating rhythm between the thing that is and between the thing that is not, right? Being aware of it is being aware of the ascendancy of energy through your body and through the intermediaries that you use, right? That's why the Ascension Magic section is so important, is because it is the go juice between the physical body and the spirit and the interaction between the alchemical principles, right? That's what this is. This is alchemy, the unification of science and spirit, right? And so moving into the awakening, right? And so this is one of those things, like there are so many folks that I feel bad for that I can't express it enough because I come off like an asshole. And I really don't mean to. It's like, dude, if you didn't want to hear it, don't fucking hear it, right? What's up, Alex? How's it going, buddy? Greetings. So, Alex was texting me before I went live and all the stuff, asking me about questions on talismans. Alex, buddy, what I would recommend after we're done with this, go watch the first 20 minutes because I actually broke down some really cool mechanics for you on building a prosperity talisman and gave some examples on what you could think about when you do that. So that way it like is a direct response to those questions you were asking me earlier. So go back at the beginning and check that out. But as you're using things like the talismans and stuff, right? Like as you're going through and you're considering what is the awakening, right? What is the energy that's moving through me, right? It's like you're waking up at the beginning of the day, right? Like you are full of energy, right? That's the thing that happens once you connect into the power and you are the full of energy, then you have that awakening, right? You have that anchor, you have that behavior that comes, right? And so it's new, it's fresh. But in that new and freshness, you've got to be more on your game. You've got to get that shit under control, because if you start letting it run roughshod over your life, instead of being able to use something like a delicate brush with a proper stroke to channel that energy in the right form, in the right stroke number, in the right stroke pattern to get that energy nice and controlled, right? It's like you're sticking your hand in the ink and you're just smearing it all over, right? Finger paints like a toddler versus master calligrapher, right? I'm somewhere in between that. Like there's some shit that it's like I will always just like do finger paints. Just saying, like the ink will end up on me. I'll wind up putting it on my clothes. Like it just gets like splattered everywhere, right? But at the same time, the clothes become talismanic, right? The clothes become infused with the magic by having been in the magic, right? So it's all part of your journey, right? Like you've got the clothes of an artist covered in paint, covered in all the things that they're doing to bring their will and to bring that into this world, right? But you have to understand that when you're doing magic, what you draw, how you draw is going to have the same effect, even if you can't see it, as opening up the salt, putting it on your salad, and you can't see every piece of salt, right? Or you can mix it into the sauce, right? But you're not going to see every little grain of sauce or every grain of salt in the sauce unless you fucked it up badly, right? But you'll taste it, right? You'll be able to taste it. You'll be able to smell the difference, right? So those are the intangibles, right? And so that's the same principles that we're talking about. You might not be able to physically see the energy rippling around that talisman once it's consecrated, once it's put into intent, right? But that doesn't mean you can't smell the talisman if you made it with tincture, right? That doesn't mean it's not going to have a vibration. That doesn't mean that those ingredients of the awakened ink that you've put into there aren't going to have the same effect, right? So you have to be very, very careful on how you structure this stuff, because that all matters, right? And this is where those witches that are like, oh no, it doesn't matter, I could just be as sloppy as I want to be, like finger paints, right? Under the right conditions, sure, a finger paint might be able to sell for $10,000, right? But I hope not. I mean, to be fair, they duct taped a goddamn banana to the wall and sold it for $100,000. Right? I wonder what drug deal that shit was. Right? Like, is that just, oh, I'm gonna buy the duct tape banana? The fuck? So there's a lot of things that you do in your magic that the duct tape banana could work for. Right? But if you're gonna make a banana split, would you use the duct tape banana, or would you use like the banana that you've like washed that hasn't been duct taped to the wall, right? Would you use something fresh and clean, right? Slice it down, right? Would you find the perfect ripeness? If you're going to make a banana split for you and you just have bananas on hand and they're good, right? That's one thing. But if you're going to make banana split on the first date to impress your lover, are you going to go to the store, find the perfect one, hand make the ice cream, find the perfect thing? You would use a peach. Fruit of immortality. Good for you, man. A peach split, right? Find the perfect peach, right? So, it's that kind of it's that level of detail, right? Would you use something that just fell off the tree and it's just like, okay, well, this is the thing, I'm picking it up off the ground? Or would you look at the tree and try to determine which one on the tree is the most ripe and pick that one, depending on who it is you're trying to impress, right? And if you're going to put something in front of a god, take the time to find the thing that'll impress it. So this is why the hierarchies is listed in the book next to the awakening, right? So you go through the hierarchy and you think, okay, where do I fit into the hierarchy? Am I a priest? Am I a layman? Am I a devotee, right? So here's the thing that, right, and you would take the time to bake it, and it would probably be the most epic peach cobbler ever, right? And then you got the ice cream, and then would you make the ice cream yourself, or would you, it's the secondary supplemental things that you add in to make the spell better, right? Making a peach cobbler and serving it alone is fine, but if you could serve it with ice cream and coffee, or if you served it with rum, or if you served it with an alcohol that brings out the, see what I mean? Like, the more you, would that be served after a really fantastic roast? Like, if you smoked a piece of meat, you made a brisket, and then you had peach cobbler for dessert, right? Like, wouldn't that be epic? Because then you've got your savory, you've got your protein, and then you've got the finishing dessert, the thing that you were remembering, right? And so what in your magic duplicates these principles, right? And so if you're making a talisman with the sacred inks, you've already put in the animal component, the herbal component, the mineral component into that ingredient, right? Because then the mineral dictates the environment, the herb dictates the life of the environment, the animal component dictates the behaviors within the life of the environment supported by the elements, right? And so as you go through and you think about those things, and then you start applying them in your arrangements, right? As you are creating gateway talismans, as you're creating those things through which energy will flow, right? Where are you in that arrangement? Where do you put yourself in that arrangement? If it's something that anybody can use, right? Like a talisman, right? Then you don't have to. But if you're going to put something that's specifically tied to your personal prosperity, right? That becomes a phylactery. That becomes, you put your name in that talisman somewhere. You put your name sigils in there under each of the 8 points. So you've got the planetary points, you've got your name points, all of these things, and you include yourself in the hierarchy, right? So that way, when you bless the talisman, in the name of whatever God of prosperity that you're doing it for, you then have the energy that's flowing through the talisman and into your life specifically, for whom the talisman is made. And that's what Greek talismana was, right? They were named for the people, right? If a priest was going to make a talisman for somebody, they would be the descriptive letters. Their name is included: son of this, daughter of this, child of this, right? That's all because that flow of energy has got to be complete from the higher up energies into that thing, right? And so you would put it between the Aleph Tau, right? And so you would have to include your name sigil in that, so that way the Aleph Tau knows that talisman is for you. So nobody else can use that energy current. All that energy is focused in your life instead of as an amulet would, as a general like environmental thing, right? And so this is what gets so crazy, is that you can have an amulet that just radiates outward, right? But if you take that extra step and put you into it after you've created it, then it becomes specific to you. You are blessing this energy for you, for your purpose. You are included in the hierarchy. The higher up in the hierarchy you are, the devotee is better than the layman. The priest is better than the devotee. The archpriest is better than the priest. The child of God is higher than the archpriest. God is higher than the child of God. The spirit of God is higher than God, which is higher than the spirit of, or the child of God, which is higher than the archpriest, which is higher than the priest, which is higher than the devotee, which is higher than the layman, which is higher than the idiot that's just finger painting. Right? The hierarchy. How devoted to your thing are you? How deep into it are you going to go? How intense are you going to make your spells and your magic? So if you use a spell of animation, that's great. That's what everybody can do. Now it comes time to consecrate it. Now it comes time to put it before the gods with you included in it. Are you a priest? Say, I am a priest of the fire, right? If you're a priest of the fire. I know, right, Mike? Finger painting is good. But under certain conditions, you need to have finesse, not finger paints, right? Scalpel, not a shotgun, right? So that's what I mean by the hierarchies, right? And then how do you fit, right? Is the singular collective. It's the progenitor of all things, right? The sources of all creation divide the attributes from the physical world into its base components, right? The archetypal forces of creation, the light things, the dark things, the shadow things, right? The light that projects into the darkness is a shadow, right? And so you think about these things. You contemplate these things. This is what it means to contemplate the mysteries, is okay, what is the contemplation that I need to understand about this talisman? What is it going to do? What is the spoken principle of this thing? What is the unspoken principle of this thing? What is it going to do if I don't do anything else to it? And is that going to be enough? Right? And so from the source of light and its light side, the dark side, and of the light, right? The shadowy side of the light, and you've taken them, the earth light, the watery light, the airy light, the woody light, the fiery light, the thundering light, the etheric light, all of those things, right? All of those things, all of it matters. All of it does. But it doesn't matter all at once. It's a hierarchy. What is the hierarchy of flow, right? So not only is it the law of narration of how the stuff gets put together, but it's the hierarchy of flow within that narration. From what, into what, by what, for what. And if you can address that, then you can write your conjuration. From the great planet of Jupiter, from the planet of Venus, I call forth prosperity and wealth, that it shall flow into me, priest of blah, 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 that by the grace of blah, 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 I, receive this energy. Right? And I was totally doing a drag thing from Hotel Transylvania. It's like the blah, blah, blah. So that's a moment. So anyway, you see where this is coming from, right? and you channel this stuff and you build this stuff on purpose. So it actually works. Right now, I'm not saying that you're going to win the lottery. Right? I'm not by any means. I'm not saying that you'll get the promotion. That's going to have to be tactical and strategic action in your conversations, right? The better you are, the more you are aware of these things, the better these things flow around you, the application becomes stable, right? How does it, so now you've got your prosperity talisman made, right? And now you've put it into the hierarchy, right? Now, you have an oath to make. The oath between you, your God, and the talisman. Wait, what do you mean? Well, the talisman contains elements of life. It exists as a spirit. It is an entity now. It has a life because it's created. It has a death if it gets destroyed. It has the energy that it's responsible for now that it's been anchored and awakened. And then it's been infused with light by the divine to dispel the shadows, right? So you're giving form to the formless by this thing you've created, okay? Now, the oath of service. What are you going to do with that energy, right? And if you say it in your ritual, live it in your action. So if you've got a prosperity talisman, that means you're going to go out and look for jobs, right? So you're going to go out and you're going to put in the time and the effort and the work to develop that. What is going to be prosperous for you? What is going to be that next level of development for you? That's where the impact is. That's how you make your talismans work. So you could go through the books of Moses all you want. You can go through and you can make all those fancy seals for all the named spirits and all those different things, right? And if you look at, I don't think I have a copy of it right. Oh, I do. Just a second. So, like I was saying, with the compound applications of, exactly, Alex, exactly. The talisman becomes an egregore. The spirit of energy within it, it has a personality. You can name it. This is the talisman of Jupiter. I name you George to serve me in all the ways that I require, George. So whenever I call your name, you come forth from this talisman or act in my life in the way that I need you to, George. You can do that. In fact, that's a very viable thing. I wouldn't call it George because, now everybody on the internet can call their talisman George, and that's okay. No, you build the name based on the letters that go into the construction of the talisman. So if you're using the triple lamed between the Greek form of it, the runic form of it, and the Hebrew form of it, you could combine the name lamed, lagas, and lambda, right? You name it out of a compound version of that, right? And all of that is the growth principle, right? Or you add in gifu, right? Which is the G, the X, which is the relationship between the giver and the receiver. It is the gift, it is the donation, it is the thing that has been given, but it is also the flow between the man and the divine, right? So it's the energy from that thing back into you and you into that, right? And so if you are creating that flow, they're giving the gift of energy into a thing, right? So how are you going to give back through that gift of energy? What is going to be the return? That's the oath of service. And so that's why that section is included, right? And that's why pacts are made. That's why those things are done. But also, if you're looking at Hebrew talismans, so in the books of Moses, right? I can't get too close because it's going to freak out the computer. But there's our letters. Those are random letter characters and such. Yeah, they say Hebrew words, but guys, these characters, those are in those shapes for specific purposes, right? Those are made in the specific colors. You're supposed to draw these things. If you go back and you read the book of Al-Madel, right? These are supposed to be made in various colors, right? So it's not just black and white. It's black, white, red. Here we go. Here's an example. So you've got the angles of the planets. You've got the Hebrew letters in there, and you've got the sacred names in there, right? So something like this replicates that same process that I was talking about, where the energy comes from what planetary aspect it comes from, the sigils that are required for that, the sacred names that are required for that. The sacred names are going to be in the language of the God that it was made for. So that way, the combination of letters creates the egregore energy flow, right? The name of God on your thing is a lesser form of the energy that's being formed by the name as one, right? It's a different process that needs to be made out of the ink. So like the 72-fold name of God, right? Like we could go on 72 different conversations. These are the letters, these are the ingredients, these are the 4 elements for those ingredients, right? The earth equality, the air equality, the fire equality, and the other quality, right? The water equality, right? And that's what the black magic of the Shah HaMempharash is about. It's about conjuring the name of God, and it's about using the names of God in the Hebrew letters, the 72-fold aspect of what is divine, putting it in the color, putting it in the ink, putting it in the arrangement on the day, in the hour, in the direction of those things, right? And so using the pacts of the divine, it's the application of that, right? It is the promise of that. You align it specifically. It aligns you specifically. So it creates a bond. It becomes a physical agreement between you and the energy, because you spent the time to bring that energy into your life, and now you have to act in a certain way in order to be able to demonstrate that energy has a through line outwards. It's the difference between saying that a bullet will shoot you without a gun, loading the bullet into the chamber, putting it up, putting the clip into the thing, cocking it back, aiming, firing, bam, shot, right? When you're creating a spell, such as a talisman or an energy and things like that, they're made for a specific purpose. One talisman, one purpose, right? You need to do a specific job for that talisman. General purpose is okay. More specific the purpose, like bullets in a gun, right? Like, bam, it's done. Bam, it's done, right? That's how you get that. That's why one sigil, like one candle, one sigil, like one spell, right? The more specific you make it, the more myopic you get, the more omissions of creation that you provide, the more clear the energy becomes, the more focused it becomes, the more easily it is able to manifest according to your desire. Does that make sense? And so this is why you create the pacts. This is why you do those things. And so when you're doing things like the spell of awakening of the spirit, right? I talked about it. It's like finger painting. If you can't get the finger paints to go, well, you have to learn how to finger paint before you can play with the calligraphy pen, right? It's true. Like, yeah, you go through these things like a child. You have to go through life like a child when you learn things. What is the physical component that you want to learn? What is the emotional component that you want to learn? What is the spiritual component that gets applied to it? And then apply the techniques of mastery, right? And so you're doing this thing, the fire of the second sight, lift the veil, make darkness light, clear the vision for me to see, sight be granted to the eyes by me, right? If you're going to awaken this, like if you want to awaken clairaudience, right? You want to see energy flows, right? You can do stuff like that, and you could focus on shit like that. Or you could, grow your hearing, grow your sensations. You can do it one by one by one by one, right? Yes, it'll get overwhelming if you try to do everything at once. This is why you go slow. This is why there is a path of progression. This is why it took 10 years for me to write the book and not just one, right? Like I can do a 1 year, like in-depth, like this is, and that's exactly what I'm doing in these videos is I'm going through section by section to section. And I'm talking about the stuff that's going to be in the 10-year anniversary edition, because going through the awakening process, going through all of these things, I'm not including all of the information from the Grimoire of Arts in its 10-year anniversary. No, this is the summary of it. This is the why you need clairaudience. This is why you need to be aware of those kinds of energies. And this is what the book is trying to tell you, even though some of the shit might just sound fucking wacky, right? I know some of it sounds wacky. It was written that way on purpose because it was notes. That was as I understood creation from the very specific thing that I was looking for, because I was trying to figure out a base point. What was the starting point that I observed in nature? What was a dragon to me, right? Beings of the first creation, fucking dinosaurs, spiritual dinosaurs, cognizant enough to be able to project their consciousness out into the universe. And in some universe, some division of the dimensions of the universe, the dinosaurs didn't go extinct. They didn't. How do I know this? I don't. What am I theorizing this on? The Super Mario Brothers movie in the 80s. I was using that as an example. right? Like, why was I using that as an example? Because it's chaos magic, right? If you can imagine it, then in some dimension it had to happen. In somebody's thought process, they are a child of that world. In somebody's thought process, they were Mario, trying to find a goddamn princess. In some portion of the universe, Link is forever trying to find his girlfriend and just never can, right? You can play Elder Scrolls all you want. You base all your stuff on mythologies, right? It's the reenactment of those mythologies. It's the cultivation of the relationships within those mythologies, right? So if I was ever to create an RPG game for role-playing game for the Academy of Sorcery Project and the Workable Witchery, right? Which is actually something I've been considering doing is, all right, you are going to take on the character of a god, right? You're going to have its name, you're going to have its attributes, you're going to have the behaviors of it, but you can only express the magic that it's associated with through the behaviors that you exhibit as a human. See where I'm going with this? Priest training for those deities. If you serve that god, then you need to know how that god will manifest itself through you. So you have to think everything you do like that god. If it's Osiris, how would Osiris brush his teeth? How would Osiris drink coffee? How would Osiris conjure the dead? Now, not then. We speak English, if it's English, right? If you speak Hebrew, how would you do it in Hebrew if you're Osiris, right? If you were born a Jew, but you're still Osiris, how would you do it, right? So these are the kinds of ideas that you can think about, and you can apply these principles in practice. And this is what I mean when it comes with pacts with the divine. When it comes with you're trying to understand the relationship between you as an individual and the divine forces above you. And you need to channel these things into manifestation. So that way, what you do and what you become allows for that level of interaction with the physical reality that everything else is omitted when you are doing this one singular thing. So that way, while you do this one singular thing, everything about that divinity, everything about that talisman, about those planetary energies, about all of those things are focused so myopically in that talisman that they flow from that into your life. So that way it gives you the energy you need to direct your energy towards prosperous things. Does that make sense? So there is a fluid through line of energy from the outer universe into the world, from the world, etc. So that way, each single step that you make is a giant path of power, right? One action does a whole bunch of different shit, right? One talisman can do a whole bunch of different shit. It's up to you to define what those steps will be, because if you cannot define what those steps will be in your manifestation, you're just as much likely to get the same kind of result if you take a jar of ink that you've spent a lot of time making, throw it against the wall, and just let it do its thing. Why would you take the time to make sure that every single meticulous energy is included in that talisman? Is because, again, it's the difference between a scattergun and a sniper's bullet, right? Scattergun, just kaboom, your head is gone, right? Nuclear bomb just destroys all creation for thousands of miles and pollutes the earth for 1,000 years, right? Snipers, done, right? What's your effect? What are you trying to do? You can make a talisman for both. An amulet is more like the nuclear bomb, right? It just kaboom the area, right? That's the goal. But if you're making a phylactery, that's the sniper's bullet, because that energy is moving directly into your life. It's an empowerment for you to use, or it's a talisman for your client, right? And so these are the things that you need to consider. So with that, that is the precursor to the Rite of Transformation. So I'm going to end here today because I've been going on for about an hour now, and I appreciate everybody that's been with me, and I appreciate those conversations, Alex, because it really did give me a lot of focus for the first part of this video. So I appreciate y'all very much. Thank you for watching, and there is some fun stuff that I've got cooking up on the coming up next week. I'll talk about more about that later, but for those that are interested in it, please put in the comments below, and I'll get back with you. But between the Spell of the Day challenge at 10 a.m. in the morning and between the Rite in the Afternoon commentary on magic or the Grimoire or working through the process of rewriting the Grimoire, I'm going to be creating classes, and I'm going to be creating a beta version of these classes. So the beta versions are always going to be free. And then those are going to be what goes into the Patreon group. So there will be a Patreon group for people that want to do monthly classes. So the classes I'm only going to limit to 5 days for about an hour, teach on a subject, and do it in Zoom, record the Zoom, put the Zoom video into the Patreon. So that way the people that are doing those things can do that. The beta version is in Patreon. So that way anybody who's part of the Patreon community for like $100 a month, I'm thinking for just the Academy fees, like that way I can start doing marketing and monetizing some of the stuff. But if you can do $100 a month, then see me in the Patreon and we will get the classes up and out starting on Monday at noon. I'll do those in Zoom, so you can get the invite link and things like that. And then those classes will then get put into a funnel, and that funnel will then, those classes will then get put up to probably $2,500. Yeah, it's that serious. Because I know exactly what this stuff will do. Because like that stuff, it's about how I got on the bestsellers list. It's about how I built businesses. It's about how I help business owners convert their business and traffic, right? So that course that I'm talking about, that I want to do beta with this group, it's not magic, but it's the application of what I've been able to do through studying magic, right? And so I want to give an open invite to you guys to, if you want to be part of that and join the Zoom, let me know, because I'm going to do a beta run of it. And then the beta run is going to end up, the stuff that I film is going to end up in the Patreon group for future people to participate in the workshop, right? Like I want to be an elevation of our YouTube into Patreon. So that way there's now enough content here and we can go really, really in depth in the weeds in the Patreon. And I'll have a lot of other discussions and stuff like that. Like there's a whole bunch of videos that I can upload so that you can always have access to just different types of concepts, right? Like all the work that I've been doing, like if you can watch as many videos as you want, but the stuff and the importance of the stuff and going through like implementation, right? Like you can watch the videos for if you're part of that group, it'll be as much videos as you want for $100 a month, right? You want implementation, you want to do it in a group setting with somebody, you want to go and meet at a hotel, then we're going to have to pay for the hotel. Then we're going to have to do for the food and the drinks for everybody at the event. Like that's when infrastructure costs. And so I know it's going to cost money. I do. I know this. Why? Because this is how much money I've spent on this. Right. And so it's doing this in bulk to be able to uplift the more people. Then what really comes into benefit is that the Patreon group becomes the storage place for all of our collective wisdom, so that you can start posting, you post in the Facebook community group, right? You post on your wisdom in the same way that I'm posting on this YouTube channel, so that people start seeing what you get up to. And so that way you can build out your YouTube channel and you can make it a robust community there. And then like with Mike, with Sprad Paranormal, right? And his Divine Sorcerer channel, right? Like go hit those up, right? Mike posts in my group, which is the Workable Witchery Workshop. He learns with the Workable Witchery Workshop and he applies in his group. And there's a digital record of that. And we create a community network. The stuff that goes into the Brotherhood with Andrew and Trevor and Hayden and all these different guys that are posting on all their different work, right? For the more that we get into sharing on this stuff, the bigger and more robust the community gets. So that way we can uplift and elevate everybody along the way, right? And the more that we get to do this, the better it becomes. The more clear that it becomes, the more stable that these things become. So that way, those things which seem intangible, those things which seem madly lunatistic, right? New word, lunatistic. You're a lunatic, right? You go out and you do these things. What is the next level of progression of those things you're trying to do? That's what next week's course is all about, right? It's the implementation of the stuff that I'm already doing and the stuff I've been able to help other people do. Now it's do you want to do it yourself? Or do you want to have a classroom setting that's beta, right? It's not the bells and whistles. It's not in a pretty Zoom. It's not in a pretty like funnel. You don't have autoplay and you won't have like comments and there's not going to be slides. Oh, there might be slides. I don't know yet. Probably not slides, because I need to know what I'm going to teach before I make the slides, right? So the first beta version, probably no slides. Probably not. Just me with you, a couple of notes on paper, kind of like this, but a little bit more than this, right? So that'll be at noon every day next week. So if you want to do that, let me know, noon Pacific. So, and then it'll be the workshop right in the afternoon, and then it'll be the spell in the day in the morning, and then everything will carry right along. And so every week I'll be able to do a new set of classes between the Rite and the afternoon. So that way, every week of every month, there is always a class. There is always the Rite in the afternoon, which is the public commentary, and there will be some form of challenge teaching spellcraft of some form, maybe herbal stuff. So after the spell of the day ends at week 15, then I'm going to go into, probably quite literally, making the incense for the 72 demons of Solomon. Right? Scary shit. And we'll go through the application of those things, right? So that's another 72 spells on top of the 105 that are already done, right? Well, in my notes, they're done. And we're going through it. And we're on week 12, day 6 tomorrow. And that starts at 10 a.m. So I will see you there if that's what you're up to. Anyway, my friends, stay safe, stay frosty, and don't be evil, all right? Anyway, have a wonderful night, and I will see you in the comments, and hopefully at noon on Monday, too. All righty. Bye for now, y'all. Ciao.